Good evening. Good evening. We're so happy to have this opportunity to come before each of you tonight, and just so thankful for you taking the time to join in with us here tonight in this most meaningful conversation. If you're just joining us, this is a great conversation to be a part of. So I want you, ma'am, and you, sir, to take the opportunity in these next few moments to share this page and to let everybody know, your family, your friends, that will come in and be a part of this meaningful conversation. I am your host tonight, Dante Long, and tonight's conversation, as you saw earlier, is centered around the Black church and the United States Census 2020. And this is a topic that we wish to delve in tonight. So without any further ado, I want to introduce to you our panelists tonight. Here on my left is Miss Shun Tucker, who's joining us tonight. And Shun Tucker is from the Fair Count organization. And Shun, tonight, would you just share with us what is Fair Count and,
Sure.
and who you are?
Absolutely. So I am Shun Tucker Allen. I am the faith coordinator for Fair Count. Fair Count is a nonprofit 501c3 that is focused on reaching each and every community within this great state to ensure that every single person is counted, in particular focusing on those that are regarded as hard to count, traditionally have been left out.
Okay. And also tonight we have our very special guest, Billy M. Honor. Billy M. Honor serves as the Director of Faith organizing with the New Georgia Project. Tonight, Billy, just share with our audience who you are and what it is that you're doing.
Well, thank you, Pastor Long, for having us, and I'm very glad to be here tonight. I am with the New Georgia Project. It is a civic engagement organization that was started several years ago with the purpose of engaging those who were eligible but not registered to vote and getting them involved in the civic process. Specifically, we're talking about women and people of color in the state of Georgia. Over the last several years, the New Georgia Project has gotten, by way of registering people to vote, somewhere in the ballpark of about 300,000 people. And I help to mobilize those folks who consider themselves to be persons of faith from among that group for how it is we can create change in our communities.
Wonderful. And so tonight, as many of you are already watching, we want to really delve into this topic tonight concerning the U.S. Census. This is a hot topic for many, and for many, it's a topic in which many people will say, well, what's the big deal, right? And so tonight, I want to take this time to just talk about the United States Census, which is the 2020 edition of the United States Census. And so exactly, Ms. Shun, can I ask you tonight, what is the census? What is the United States Census?
So let's start with a little bit of trivia, and that the first census was actually mandated in 1790.
Okay.
I know that because I was just recently involved in the trivia census.
Okay.
So it is, the first one was in 1790, and it has a mission to count every single person one time and in the right place.
Okay. And so it was started to count individuals because what was the general reasoning for needing to be counted?
Well, we just needed to, just for the purposes of representation, for the purposes of just having an accurate count of, who was in the country.
Okay, and I don't want to be condescending when I ask this, but exactly how has the census been counted in historically speaking?
You mean in just give me a little bit.
So do people go somewhere and participate in the census?
So typically the census is being mail or phone.
Okay.
And as we know, the enumerators go door to door.
Okay.
And knock the doors. But this particular census will be a little bit different, if that's what we're referring to. It'll be a little bit different in nature because it will be online for the very first time.
Wow. Did you hear that? She said this particular census will be different. It will be something that has never happened in the history, as you heard that date said earlier, in the 1700s. This is the very first time that the census will be conducted in a brand new way. And you hinted to that just a few moments ago, Shun. You said that the census is going to be online. Exactly why is that going to transpire, and not only why, but how?
How does it happen?
Yeah, how would that happen?
Well, so let me also say that you still have the other ways to do it as well. So it will, although it will be online, you are still able to do phone and mail. You still have those options, but certainly online is the easiest way to do it. And what will happen is that you will receive a mailer from the United States Census. In fact, beginning this month, between March 12th and 20th, most households will receive a letter from the census with a unique code on it.
Okay, give me that date one more time.
Between March 12th and March 20th.
Okay.
Somewhere
Okay.
in that time period, you will receive a mailer with a unique code. That code is in fact unique to the household, not necessarily the person. So you will select one person from your household, just one, although everybody may want to do it.
Okay.
Just one, and that person will fill it out for every single person within the household.
Okay. Okay.
And you do it, it's safe, and you should be done within 10 minutes.
10 minutes. 10 minutes
But it takes
time.
about 10 minutes.
10
to
minutes
fill it
time.
out.
So the person is going to have to. Are they going to be forced to do it online?
They are not. They
okay.
are not, in fact. As I said, they still have the option to do mail or phone. We encourage that you do it online because it is quick, it is easy, and the key reason is that when you do it online, you don't get those pesky enumerators coming to your door. So we know, in particular for communities that are at risk,
Sure.
that would be probably the better method. You just knock it out, it's over, and you don't have to worry about anybody coming to your door to enumerate you.
Wow. And so this year, again, just to highlight what you said, that individuals will receive this in the mail sometime within the next 30 days or so.
Absolutely, within the next week or so.
In the next week or so.
Right.
So
Yep.
for somebody that's watching, I need you tonight to go ahead and alert everybody in the household.
Absolutely.
Let's check the mail every day. So I don't know if you need to assign the kids to do that, or mom or dad, you need to get out to that mailbox or that P.O. box or however it is that you receive your mail. But I want to put you on high alert tonight, those that are watching. Listen, check the mail. Secondly, tell all of your family members, all of your friends, all of your persons that you have influence with, this is the time that we really need to check that mail. We've got to check that mail so that we can get that information for that code that you spoke about, so that we can go ahead and fill that out.
I just want to interject real quick. I'm sorry. Just want to be more specific.
Sure.
You can still participate even if you don't have a code. So we
Okay.
can't even let the code be an excuse. You
Okay.
can go on. If you do not have a code, you can absolutely still go online, and it's just a couple of extra steps.
Okay. So I want to make sure everybody heard that. If you do get the code, that's great. If you do not receive the code, do not allow this to be a deterrent for you to take that paper and throw it in the trash or throw it on the side so that I'll get around to it at some point. When it is that you receive this correspondence, please hear me good tonight. Please make sure that you act on it immediately, because it has some significant ramifications that we'll talk about in just a few minutes. And so, Billy, tonight I want to ask the question, as we were talking about this earlier. What is the importance? Somebody said, but preacher, you said something about the black church. And so I want to ask you that. What is the importance of this representation? What's the importance of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, we know that the black church and black churches, we should say, and we know that there is no single thing that we refer to as the black church. There are black churches, and it's not monolithic. There are diverse communities of faith among African American communities, even more broadly. We know that everybody isn't just Christian, but in the African American community, there has been this collection of faith communities Christian faith communities that we refer to as black churches that have been a central component of the fight for civil rights in this country. And that fight for civil rights has had to do with voting rights. It's had to do with the full inclusion and equality of persons of color into mainstream society. It's had to do with making sure that there has been equal representation under the law. And it had to make sure that there is equal representation in all facets of what we call civic society. And that's where the census comes in, because the black church has been one of the major voices in American society for making sure that people of color, African Americans more specifically, have representation in the halls of power and have representation when it is that the allocation of resources are being decided. And so that's why this is an important conversation for the black church, because black churches make sure that their constituencies, their members, the people who sit in their pews have representation in the places where it matters, in the civic halls of power, and that has largely to do with the census.
Okay. And so I think what he just said there was to help all of us understand that the black church, that place that you worship at, that is really at the bedrock of where most of us will find that there is some commonality of where we have shared interest, right? We have shared interest. And one of those interests that I want to ask about the black church, particularly one dynamic of the black church, let's talk about the black men.
Sure.
Let's talk about the black men.
Sure.
Is this census significant to black men? Is it important?
Absolutely. Every census is significant to black males. It's significant to every part of our community for sure. But the reason why we highlight black men, I know Shun has a lot to say about this because Fair Count has done a lot of wonderful work around this, is that there are hard to count constituencies, which means that historically, when we do the census every 10 years, there are groups of people who get undercounted, which means we know that when the numbers come in, there are more people than what the numbers reflect. And so we know, when we look at these numbers and we'll say, well, we know there are more black men than this, but yet we say they didn't seem to be counted, right? So we call those undercounted communities, or maybe hard to count sort of constituencies, and black males tend to be that way because there is a lot of skepticism around the government, and understandably so, right, among the black male community, saying, well, look, I'm not sure I want to be counted. I'm not sure I want the government to know where I am. I'm not sure that I trust the government having my information, right? And when you have the high levels of suspicion and skepticism among black males due to the historic legacy of white supremacy against black males and the way the government has treated them and used them, you can understand why it is that black males have been a historically undercounted representation. But that's problematic, because what we know is that black males are also very civically engaged, very politically astute, and it's very important that they be counted, because when they are counted, then those resources come to the communities where they live and become a benefit to them and to all of us.
All right. So one of the things that we want to do is to just unveil that cover of individuals that have extreme reservations. And just one more time, as you said earlier, we have every right to be suspicious, right?
Sure.
But why is it at this time that we should move past our suspicion? Why do you think we should move past that at this juncture?
Yeah, because there's too much at stake. I mean, that's the bottom line. There's too much at stake. The resources of our community as pertains to our children, right, are at stake. When we talk about schools and the allocation of resources for schools, that all depends on these numbers that get counted. When you see schools that have so many kids in trailers, and then you say, well, how did that school not know that a certain amount of kids were going to show up? Well, that's part of the reason why, because they look at the numbers and say, this is the amount of kids that live in this neighborhood and the amount of families that live in this neighborhood. And when those numbers are not reflected accurately, we see that the resources are not distributed accurately. And I could go on and on with examples like that of why there's too much at stake. And because we know that we move past the point now where we can start thinking about the census as being some type of government conspiracy that's not safe. There are lots of ways for which we can know that the census is safe. This doesn't just apply to African Americans. We know that there are a lot of our brown brothers and sisters who have been very concerned due to the way in which the immigration situation continues to unfold in our country, that if they let themselves be counted, that people are going to come after certain persons in their communities. And we're very, very cognizant of that. And I think we need to keep the antenna up, but also recognize that there's too much at stake for us simply to just write it off when we know that there are precautions that have been put in place.
So this really gets into these real tough, sticky situations. If I am undocumented,
yes,
if I have some type of criminal style or criminal type, maybe not an indictment, but I didn't pay a parking ticket or something civic, or maybe a little more difficult with whatever is going on in my life. I guess I'm not going to ask you to make that tough answer to this tough question, but most people are simply saying, I want to leave well enough alone, right? Listen, I'm good where I'm at.
Yeah.
I know, you talk about that school that my daughter or my son goes to, and yeah, they're out there in that trailer. When it rains, they come home with all the mud on their shoes and all that stuff. But I just need to leave well enough alone. And preacher tonight, Shun, can't we just leave well enough alone?
Well, I mean, what I would start by saying is that leaving well enough alone, unfortunately, sets your community back. What we know is that the census brings in you have $1.5 trillion that is distributed through roughly 300 federal programs. So yes, you can choose to leave it alone, but what you are in turn doing is hurting your community. Each one of us, if we go by that rate, just here in the state of Georgia, it's allocated, and this number has fluctuated. It's actually increased. But I will say for today that we're at a 2,300 is what most have elected to use. So at $2,300 a person, what that lets us know is whether you are a janitor or a CEO, a black man or a white man, a gay person or a straight person, young or old, you count equally. That is within the eyes of the census, but more importantly for us as people that recognize and abide by faith, that is also in the eyes of God. So we make no mistake that this is something that is about dignity. Earlier, Billy talked about black men in particular, and I think that the one thing that is very important for black men to know, for all of us to know, is that studies have shown that 67,000 black men are at risk of being undercounted. That is here in our state, Georgia. Those 67,000 men being undercounted could translate to $150 million a year, every year for 10 years. So this is what we lose. And that this has staggering repercussions for us, because when we talk about those 300 federal programs that those funds are allocated to, those are programs that affect our real lives. This is WIC, this is TANF, this is Section 8, this is national school lunch programs, highway funding. So you go on with the long list, and I think one of the most important things is that it's important for us to let our community know what those programs are.
Wow, you just said something that I'm struggling with. My congregation and many congregations like myself, we are doing all that we can to try to address some of the shortcomings of our community. When you talk about one thing in particular, there have been initiatives in my particular city and county where churches have been called together to address some of the school lunch insufficiencies. Is it fair to say that perhaps 10 years ago, our community did not participate adequately to, in many regards, provide what could have already been in place so that we, the church, could have done something, we could have allocated our monies to address another need? Is that fair to
I
say?
think that's a very fair assumption, and I think it's also a direct example of how the church is instrumental in this push. So you're absolutely right.
So what I want to say to that, Pastor, I know you want to ask your congregation, hey, listen, this school is in this crisis. This nonprofit organization is in this crisis. Let's raise capital. Let's have a drive. But I think the way that you can relieve some of the burden tonight on your congregation is that this Sunday, this Wednesday, this whatever day it is that you worship, this Saturday or whenever, admonish your people. Participate in this census so that the funds that can potentially benefit your community will be made available. And I know that's not as easy done as easy said, because this is the next thing I want to ask. There are going to be some people that are just hard to find and hard to get a hold of. And so what is the significance, Billy, that you believe to those persons that are not at arm's reach, if you will?
Yeah, well, this is how we have to use our networks, our community networks. We know that, as Dr. Robert Michael Franklin says in his book, Crisis in the Village, he talks about anchor institutions in the African American community. And he talks about black families, black schools, and black churches as being the primary anchor institutions. I would add other fraternal organizations like black fraternities and sororities as well, civic organizations. These are all organizations and institutions that are in our community that actually touch people on a daily basis. And all of these, black families, black faith communities, black schools, black fraternal organizations, sororities, and all have to play a part in how it is we connect to these folks. Because these are the organizations that are in the community, touching hands with people. These are the organizations that are routinely making sure that they keep up with people in the community through gatherings and other weekly affairs. And we have to use all of those tools that are at our disposal to make sure that we get the word out about the importance of being counted. Listen, we cannot afford to spend another 10 years, right? This is, people don't know it, but the UN, a lot of people don't know this, but the UN has declared this, the actual decade. We're right in the midst of the decade of people of African descent, where they are highlighting the contribution and the struggle of people of African descent and how it is we can join together in our collective struggle for freedom and equality, not just in America, but across the globe, right? Well, if we're in the midst of that, we have to not just always talk about what somebody else needs to do in our community. The census is our opportunity to do something for ourselves. It's our opportunity to stand up. We were in the midst of an election here in Georgia for governor 2 years ago, and there was a cry that rose up to count every vote. And that was a bipartisan call, by the way, because it was a call to say that regardless of who you vote for, everybody that votes should be counted. It's a part of what it means to be a citizen, right? This is the same thing here. Every person counts, and this is our opportunity to say that every person matters by standing up and being counted. And we don't want this decade to pass again without us doing our role.
So I think what you just heard is that we're at a crisis. We're at a crisis, and I think this is why we took the time to come to you tonight, those that are watching. And we still want to say there's somebody that needs to hear this message. So go ahead and hit that share button. But you heard it just a moment ago. We're right at the point where we can show as a people, as a collective group, right? We can demonstrate our significance and what it is that we bring to the table, right, not only in our local community, but in our state, in our country, and the world at large, right? If we can band together, as what you just heard just a moment ago, and I think the reason why we're here tonight is to really compel to leaders and workers in the church. Tonight, this is a pointed conversation. To talk to those that are in church leadership and to talk to those that are working in their local communities communities of faith, if you will, that it is your responsibility. Can I say that? Is that fair to say? It's your responsibility to compel the people that you have influence with to be counted. I know we spend so much time really trying to get people registered to vote, and that's a very noble thing to do. But I think what we're talking about today is much more significant, because if you're not counted, then certainly your vote doesn't matter, right?
Well, it has to do with the way in which your representation in terms of gerrymandering. And I know Shun has a lot she could say about this. So when it is that they go to decide what representatives should represent what districts, then they look at the numbers. And part of what happens in this sort of gerrymandering situation of sort of cutting up particular splices and saying that this community should be represented by this person or the other person, the numbers matter, right? And we want the most accurate numbers possible, so that when we get into these questions about gerrymandering and whether it is a positive or negative or whatever the case may be, that it is the most accurate reflection of the people in these communities. You agree with that, Shun?
That's absolutely spot on, Billy. I would absolutely agree. It is about representation.
Okay.
And even if you are someone that doesn't want to think about it on a political level, it's also about school districts. I mean, we have the census touches almost every part of our life in some respect. So if you just translate it to absolutely, it is about political representation. But if you have someone that says, oh, I'm non-political, man, I don't know about, okay, then just think about your kid. Think about how those school district lines are drawn. The census affects so many parts and pieces of our lives that you're absolutely right. It is our obligation to complete it. In fact, it is mandated that we complete our applications. So I think that this is a wonderful thing that we're doing tonight, because we're having a real earnest conversation about the importance of it, the people that are at risk of not being reached, which is a lot of why Fair Count even existed, because we came out of the space of just touching a lot of really positive people, a lot of people that no one had touched, and just wanting to just really being concerned about those people, especially in 2020, and recognizing that even as it relates to the census being online, there are a lot of people that don't even have access to that. So this is an important topic, and I'm very grateful that we're paying attention to it tonight.
As a pastor, what can I do? And those that are watching, I know we got some pastors watching us tonight as you're commenting here, and many are asking the question, so what can we as pastors do to really help our people get counted? You know, weigh in on that.
I'll take it from a non-pastor position, and then I'll kick it over to Billy from a pastor position. But what I would say to every single faith leader out there is nothing is too small. The most important thing as a pastor that you can do is messaging. You are a trusted member. You are the most important person in the room when you walk into that church or that synagogue, wherever you're walking into, whatever faith space you're walking into, you are the leader of that space. So when you're looking at your congregations and you're saying, we need you to fill this out because this is about dignity, this is about all of us counting in the eyes of God, it's also about it being safe. As a pastor, because you're trusted, when you look at your congregants and say, this is safe, because it is in fact safe. The census is protected. We want people to know tonight that even the census workers, if they violate any part of that, if any of your information is revealed, they will have a penalty of up to $250,000 and can receive up to 5 years in jail. The census information itself is not revealed to anyone. That information is confidential for 72 years. The census workers are sworn to a lifetime of never revealing that information. So those are things that are just important and necessary for pastors to really convey to, like Billy said, some of those people that are suspicious. Oh, I don't want anybody to find me. Really articulating to them that this has nothing to do with your criminal record. You could have a warrant. Filling out your census is not going to affect that in any way. I take that very seriously as a woman of color, a black woman putting that message out there. It's safe. My daddy and my brothers are registering. So I'm saying that to say we have to push past the fear.
Okay.
And recognize that this is not only about us in this moment, it's about our children.
It's about our children.
Absolutely.
You keep saying that, and I want us to really hear that, and that this isn't just about my position.
Absolutely.
And biblically, we realize if we're talking about salvation and all of the other tenets of the faith, we channel our faith through that it is multi-generational, right? And so I want us again to just drive that point home. Maybe you don't see the value, but it is significant even for your children and how it is that they will live their life and the opportunities that were granted to you and your forefathers. Hopefully they will be granted more efficient and better opportunities because they will no doubt see the significance of taking part.
And we need to count them too, because they were undercounted.
Wow, wow. So when I get in that pulpit this weekend, and I know I've got my sermon laid out and I've got my points, but tonight, can you help me? And can you help that pastor that's watching, that leader of that small group or whatever role they're playing? Put some type of sermonic presentation together that includes the census.
Yeah, well, I know better than to tell preachers how to preach. But, listen, here's the thing. There's a lot of actual biblical content that we have around census, right? So the United States is not the first nation to have a census, right? Nations throughout time have counted their constituencies to see how many citizens are there for various purposes. In the Bible, oftentimes it had to do with military and to see how strong and what was the might of the nation, right? And to see if they needed to increase the military or if they needed to get more money to support the military, right? There are other times we see that even Jesus, right? The birth of Jesus comes at the time of census, right? So the census is oftentimes used as a tool of empire, we know. But there's a way in which you can preach in terms of scripture to talk about the way in which God moves, right? In the midst, right, of even number counting, right? There's some preachers often like to say that God is not a numerologist, but there is significance in numbers, right? And I think there's a way in which we can begin to talk about the significance of what it means. First of all, and Shun used the word that's very important. It's a theological term that we don't use enough, and it's dignity, right? That how it is that we affirm our dignity and our worth by standing up and letting our voice be heard. And that is, I believe, that is a spiritual discipline, right? And that is the way in which I think we should think about the census, right? So the preacher can begin to talk about the importance of being counted, the importance of being seen. And one of the ways that you are seen in our society is by getting counted, right? There are ways to preach about the importance of our collective destiny and that you can't love a God who you haven't seen if you don't love your brothers and sisters for whom you see every day. And one of the ways that we express that love is through justice, right? And justice is the approximation of fairness and truth in our society. And this is another way in which we talk about the census. There are lots of ways to make the connection between the census, between the work of justice, between the work of the people of God. I will say this last thing. April 1st, Shun, right? April 1st is National Census Day. There's going to be a Sunday preceding that, right?
There is.
A lot of churches have the opportunity to make that a We Count Sunday, where we begin to get people hyped up for the census and begin to highlight it even then, right? Before that April 1st deadline.
Billy. The census themselves have actually taken that into consideration. So March 27th through 29th is in fact National Census Worship Weekend. This is an opportunity for all faiths, whether it's a Jumu'ah service, whether it's a Sabbath service or a Sunday service. Everybody can get it in that weekend in some form. This is the census's way of saying we, as people of faith, will come together as a show of strength to say that we recognize the importance of the census, and we elect to convey it over this 3-day period. So what we hope happens is that pastors all over, faith leaders all over this country, because this is a national thing, all over this country for those 3 days, just in some way gets involved. And let me be clear, I work with a lot of pastors, And what I would say to every single pastor, because what I do when I talk to them is nothing's too big, nothing's too little.
Yeah.
If you are a busy pastor, I'm going to turn to the camera so people can hear this emphasis. If you are a busy pastor, just simply making an announcement for your people to go home and fill out the census can be enough. It's better than doing nothing. So we just want everybody to understand sometimes the census is daunting because a lot of pastors don't know about it. They aren't really, typically when you're the pastor, you're the smartest person in that room. So the census can be complicated for some people. What we've done at Fair Count is we have actually put together a toolkit we have two versions. One is an all-face version. One is a version specifically designed for the Black church. So you can get that toolkit. It starts with the basic overview of the census. It goes on to talk about those hard-to-count populations that Billy referred to. It then gives you a timeline of the things that are going to come up. And it gives you some sermon recommendations, some things for your bulletins. So there's a lot packed in it. I encourage everyone to go to faircount.org to look at that toolkit, and hopefully it can help somebody out there. I feel it will, because I actually worked on it a little bit myself, so I'm very proud of that. It was a very intentional effort by myself and certainly my very brilliant boss, Dr. Janine Abrams-McLean.
Okay.
Shout out.
Yes, shout out to Janine for all of her hard work and editing.
Sure. So listen, it's right there on the screen. Tonight, I need as many of you not to delay, but go right now to faircount.org. You need to get that toolkit.
Absolutely.
Have that in your possession so that this weekend and in the weekends to come, you can take this weekend to review over it. Perhaps share it with a small group or decipher through it, apply what applies to you, and what the old saying, whatever is not, then just put it aside. But I know they've taken a lot of time to craft that so that it is very meaningful to the average local church. So again, go to faircount.org today and pick up that toolkit. Billy, let me ask you this, with what New Georgia Project is doing, can you speak a little bit about how it is that the Black church and those persons that are watching tonight can really learn more about what New Georgia Project is about, and are there any opportunities for them to serve?
Absolutely. Well, we would say we're asking for everyone who is interested in being a part of the census to make sure that they hit up Fair Count. And my dear sister here, Shun, who can make sure they give you great help, we're pretty much referring everybody to Fair Count as it pertains to the census, because I really believe in our community there is a division of labor, right? We all can't do everything, but we can all do some things. And what our organization is going to try to do around the census is to divert faith communities to Shun. But we are working with Black males across the state of Georgia. And so if you would like to host, if you have a barbershop, right? Or if you have a men's group, right? And you just want to get some Black males together to talk, right? About some of the issues that we've been talking about around the census and to deal with some of the skepticism that's out there. You can reach us at the www.newgeorgiaproject.org. Reach out to us and just let us know you're interested in hosting a Black male gathering to where we could talk about these issues. Because I believe that whatever you don't confront, whatever you don't confront, you can't reveal, and you can't take the power away from it. We got to face it head on. We got to talk about it. We can't just put it aside. So if you want to host some of those gatherings, we'd love to have it. Also, if you want to just talk about the connection that's coming up, because after the census is over, it'll be time to talk about voting, right? And our primaries. And so we can certainly help you with that too.
Great. And so we pray that tonight's conversation has really been an eye-opener for somebody to really understand the significance of the census. And Shun, just help us again. You said that this is going to happen within the next 30 days. They'll be receiving this in the mail?
Absolutely. You will receive that mailer beginning March 12th. So we are at the 9th, I think, today, 9th. So you're a few days out. Once you receive that mailer, as I said, you can just simply go online. If you do not receive a mailer, you don't have to have that unique code. You can still, in fact, go online to register. And we want people to understand, again, to check us out at faircount.org for any questions you may have. We also have a division called blackmencount.org, where it is a complete count committee that focuses on just increasing the count with black men in particular. We encourage people to go to see all of this information and stress again that in addition to our black men being undercounted, we cannot forget our children. Over 20,000 children were undercounted in 2010.
Wow.
This is significant to us. So we have to make sure the babies are counting. I also want to just say, for those that are unsure about babies, if the baby is born midnight, April 1st, count them. If someone, I will expand it past babies and just answer some of the kind of questions we get about it. I don't know if I should count my son, because sometimes he stays with me, sometimes he stays with his girlfriend. Count him. If you are in doubt, count him. If you have that couch surfing nephew that, hey, I'm just gonna stay over for a couple of days, auntie. I have a few nephews. Count them.
Likewise.
If the Jordans are there, I tell people if they left their Jordans, count them. So we wanna make sure everybody gets counted, everybody understand that it is important. It's important to our community, it's important to our future. And it's just what we have to do. It is a part of taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. And listen, even after we leave this time, I want many of you to go into the comments if you have any questions, perhaps that we did not address tonight. Just leave them in the comments section, and somebody from one of our staffs will make sure that we address any question or concern that you may have. Or if you need to schedule that event that Billy talked about earlier, at that barber shop or at that men's group, to talk about removing the stigma from participating in the census, go ahead and begin to schedule that now, because we want to work together in this effort. We want to bring together every person in our community to make sure that they are counted. So listen, we're getting ready to leave tonight, and we just want everybody who has tuned in tonight to continue to share this message, because we must be counted. We heard it earlier. Our children, funding, our communities, all of these things are at risk and can be compromised if we do not participate in the census. So again tonight, please, pastor, please, church leader, please, business owner, do all that you can do to get those that you have influence with to participate in the 2026 census. All right, listen, we love you. We thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. We'll be back at another time to give you a little bit more information concerning this very relevant issue. God bless.